Alright, so with lesson 4.4, saying we're talking about slope-intercept form, x-intercept, y-intercept, and the equation how to graph it. The first thing on key ideas is the x-intercept. I am going to take notes over here just to kind of verify stuff, and I think you guys should copy this with me. But the x-intercept of a line is the x-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the x-axis. It occurs when y equals 0. So I have up on the board, I wrote that, but I'm going to write right over here, and I suggest you put your notes here with me. But I'm going to say x-intercept couple important notes about it. It's where line crosses x-axis. Probably been easier for me to take that. So the x-intercept, where the line crosses the x-axis, and y equals 0. So if y equals 0, whenever I list my coordinates, it doesn't matter what my coordinates are. I know that the y coordinate will always be 0. So it doesn't matter. I guess I don't need to write 3 times. I don't know why I'm doing that. My x-intercept, I don't know why I was writing it. My x-intercept is going to be this blank, but my y is always going to be 0. Because if I look going left and right, I'm not going above or below that line. I'm right on the x-axis. Now, for our straight line, can we say x is any number we want? No. It has to be where that line will cross it. Since we know y equals 0, to solve, we just put y equals 0 on an equation and we solve for x. And we'll do an example of that in a little bit. The next one they talk about, and I'm going to switch colors, is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. And it happens when x equals 0. So I'm going to say y-intercept is where the line crosses y-axis. X equals 0. And I'm going to show you something good, even though it's going to be on our next part. We're going to write down the equation that we're going to work with today. And y equals mx plus b. This plus b, this tells me my y-intercept. So when I'm giving you the equation, I pretty much tell you the answer. All you have to do is look at the line and know where to look. Slope-intercept form. A linear equation written in the form y equals mx plus b is in slope-intercept form. The slope of the line is m and the y-intercept of the line is b. This part right here is important. I'm going to rewrite it just so it's a little bit larger, but I'm writing the same thing. Y equals mx plus b. Okay, like we learned the other day, m is our slope. And like we're learning today, this b is our y-intercept. Y and x will be the coordinates. So if I said of a line coordinates 1, 5, you could put those into the equation. And in fact, that's something we will have to do in the future to solve these. This is the most important thing, that we recognize the parts of a line. Y equals mx plus b. It's slope-intercept form. It tells us the slope of the line, and it tells us where the y-intercept is. knowing those two things, I can graph them up. So example 1, this is how they showed us how they did it. Find the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of each linear equation. So I'm going to zoom in. They gave us the equation y equals negative 4x minus 2. It is in slope-intercept form. We have to make sure it's in that form. That's what we wrote down. I'm going to write it again over and over and over. We have to have it in this form. I have to put it that way. So if I have an equation that's x plus y equals 5, we have to move that x over. We have to get it so we're solved for y. When it's in this way, the question is, what is the slope and what's the y-intercept? Okay? We look at this. The coefficient that went in front of our x was negative 4. So negative 4 is our slope. Remember, we write that as m equals negative 4. And then it says minus 2. So my y-intercept was negative 2. That sign that comes in front of that number is going to stay with it. Tell me whether it's positive or if it's negative. So this was that simple. Negative 4 was slope. Negative 2 was our y-intercept. That's what you have to be able to identify for me today. And then we'll show you how we're going to graph it. If we look at B, they have y minus 5 equals 3 over 2x. Is that in slope-intercept form? Is the y all by itself on one side of the equal sign? No. So this goes back to, remember how I took your math class spirals? This goes back to how we have to understand how to solve equations. So I have to get y by itself. Here it's telling you the instructions, what they did. They added 5 to each side. I added 5 here. I have to add 5 here. When you do that, negative 5 plus 5 cancels out. And I just have y. 3/2 x. And I have a plus 5. Is this in slope-intercept form? Yeah. I have my y alone. I have an x. So I have my slope. And I have plus a number. This is now in slope-intercept form. Turn. Sit up, turn, face the board. All the work's up here, not towards the back. So, they want to know what is my slope. It shows me my slope, it says right here is 3/2. Well, it's because of this right here. That is the fraction or the number, the coefficient that came right before my x. My slope is 3/2. Rise 3 over 2. So anytime I graph it, I find a point, I'm going to go up 3, and I'm going to go over 2 to the right. It wants to know my y-intercept. That is shown, colors, right here. After my x, I either added or subtracted a number. I added 5. So my y-intercept is plus 5. It's a positive 5. Okay, try it. I want you guys to do number 1. What is my slope? Don't shout it out. And then I'm going to use B. And remember, B stands for y-intercept. So I don't have to write y-intercept out. C, right now, this is you testing yourself. Can you identify the slope and the y-intercept? That's going to be part of your assignment today. Go ahead and try that. Write down your answer. Come on, dude. Try to pick up. You're right in front of you. Alright, so who found my slope? Dylan, what is my slope? 3. It's the number that came right in front of my x. Slope was 3. Let's go with the other Dylan. What's my y-intercept?
7.
Real close. Good, thank you. It was 7, but remember, whatever, if it's adding or subtracting, stays with it. So it is a -7. Let's go to 2. Quick question, is that in slope-intercept form?
No.
Awesome. How am I going to solve it? Oh. All right, what was your question?
So, is the formula y equals a plus b is still stay negative?
Yeah, because your plus and b, I could have wrote this as y equals 3x plus -7. But remember, if I am adding a negative, we just simplify that to just saying subtract 7. Alright, so we'll go back to this one. You already answered that question. Yeah. Y minus 1 equals -2/3 x. You said no, it's not. I have to add 1. Okay. I have y over here. I have -2/3 x plus 1, which means my equation, I'm going to rewrite it so it's nice and neat. There we go. I want to know what is my slope and what is my y-intercept. So shout them out. I want a couple people to try this. I'm going to make sure you're taking the notes with us. Haley, what's my slope? Good. It's the fraction or number in front of my x. So it is -2/3. What is my y-intercept, Dusty?
1 is positive.
Yeah. +1. Perfect. That is one part that you have to do today. Make sure you get in slope-intercept form, and then identify what's coming before the x, which is our slope, and when we add the +1. Okay, the next part we have to look at, so now you guys have done the hard or the easy part. Actually, it's kind of the hardest part, to be honest. You've taken an equation, you've made sure it's in slope-intercept form, and you've told me what the slope was and what the intercept form is. Now, you remember how even on your quiz today, you had to make that table to find out all your coordinates and stuff? With slope-intercept form, you don't have to do that. They told you one of your coordinates. They told you what your y-intercept was. They told you that coordinate. And then you have your slope, and we're going to work off that. This is how we do it. If I'm asked to graph -3x plus 3, the first thing we're going to do is what we just did. Identify the slope and the y-intercept. On their example, and I'm going to write them out, they show me that my slope right here was -3. Okay, so I'm going to write and my slope was -3. I got 2, but I don't know if they work. And then the y-intercept we saw was 3. Or a +3 if you want to put the positive sign in. Step 2. Here comes the next step, and this is where it works out well.
Oh, this doesn't work.
Notice how they say the y-intercept is 3. You guys are all good that we identified that, right? So all I have to do, if the y-intercept's 3, we know that its coordinate is 0, 3. Because x is always 0 when the y-intercept. Or you can just think of, here's my y-axis. I'm going to say going right up and down is my y-axis. And if I'm intercepting that at +3, I go up and I'm intersecting it right here. The point has to be on the y-intercept to intersect it. So the coordinate is 0, 3. That's the first thing you do. Then, So step 2 is really easy. Step 3 is use the slope. Well, we told you the slope was -3. And remember, if -3 is a whole number, we can put it over a fraction. So we put it over a fraction, over 1 to make it a fraction. So I'm going to go from that y-intercept, and I'm going to do, remember, this is rise over run. So I'm going to rise -3. Meaning I'm going to go down 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to run to the right a +1. 1. There's my other point. You now have 2 points on the graph. Oh, that was a failure and a half. I can't believe I got
Hands are rocks.
So I now have 2 points on my graph. I can go and make a line. I can go ahead and keep doing this though. 1, 2, 3 over 1. There's another point here. Then I am able to, I'm going to use blues to see it. I can graph my line through those points. That's really all you have to do to graph this. We get a we don't have to take that whole table or anything. Yes.
How much time are we not doing?
Not as much time do you need?
We only have 3 minutes.
Oh, we're 43.
33.
That's all right.
Oh, wow.
You'll take it home.
Uh,
So
What if we need help?
then, if they ask you the question, I drew my line, and if they ask you the question, where does the line cross the x-axis? Well, I look at my x-axis right here, and it's right there. It crossed it at 1, 0. Alright, here's what I'm going to give you for your homework. If you get confused, this self-assessment is just like more practice that you could have done.
Record it.
Huh?
Yeah. Did you record it? Look
I
at the
did.
bottom left.
You want me to do a couple of them and record them? Put them on there?
Do you do one?
No,
I can't.
no.
No, not right now in class. I can record and put it on here.
Wait,
These are just examples. This is why I like this. Is they're examples. They show you the work. They tell you how to do it. For your homework, make sure you copy this down correct, because I'm going to give this worksheet to you. Remember, I know I said worksheet weird, but I changed your questions. You are going to do numbers 9 through 13.
That's it.
No. 9 through 13, when you look at this, it's really easy. Number 9 and 10, you have to graph. So, if you need to get a piece of grid paper, you can get some. It's over there in the white tub. Or, listen up. If you look here, I put on mine, one of these next tabs says grid paper. You can do it on OneNote if you need to. 9 through 13. 14 through 22, even. 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. I want you to do number 23, and then 25 through 30, even. Now, I know it sounds like a lot. It's only like 14 questions, I think, total. And to be honest, number 11, 12, and 13 are very simple. 14 through 22, your biggest thing is you have to write it in slope-intercept form and tell me what the slope is and the intercept form is. So, most of this will not take you very long. Remember, it is a completion grade, and then we'll grade it together to see how well you're doing. Will you get that one to Brett, you want what? If you are confused, make sure you come talk to me.